Hello, welcome to DJ Exotics. I'm David, and today we're talking about how to keep your live food in better health to feed to your pet reptiles. Before we get started, we've got two bits of housekeeping. Number one, we are animal led, and because I've got live food today, I haven't got an animal out with me, but I will be putting B-roll around. The second thing is to please remember to like, share and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Let's get into the video. So when keeping pet reptiles, especially geckos, such as crested geckos or leopard geckos, skinks like Berber skinks or blue-tongued skinks, or even other animals such as bearded dragons and even garter snakes and things like that, you're going to have to feed some live insects at some point. Now, for some people this can be a little bit of a worry. They don't like the jumping of a cricket, or they don't like the wiggliness of a mealworm. But this is just all part of nature. What happens is that you will get your live food in a tub just like this. Now this isn't actually how they came because I buy them in bulk, but I do have a few of these around so I can demonstrate it. But this is how you will get it from a pet shop. And a lot of people will just put these on top of their enclosure just like that, leave them alone, get them out every so often, put a few in. You might put them in the fridge. You know, those are the things that you can do. The problem with that is that actually that can make the mealworms or the crickets or the locusts pretty ill. They die quite quickly from doing that sort of thing. So the best thing to do is actually to treat them like they are another animal, another pet in your house, and give them a really good life until they become food for your pet reptile. Now the first thing that we recommend is getting another tub, something like this for those who've got 1 or 2 lizards, or maybe perhaps one of the larger faunariums. You can get those quite cheap for about £15, and then putting your bugs in one of those. You can also get a plastic aquarium. Now you can keep these on top of a leopard gecko enclosure or the reptile enclosure that you've got, or you can keep them separate. Now what you really just want to do is literally make sure there's plenty of ventilation around here, so you can drill holes in really usable boxes. If you've got faunariums, they've already got the holes already there for you, so it creates the air circulation, and you don't need to do much. Now there are 2 options here. You could put a layer of porridge oats or oats at the bottom, which can be really good substrate for the mealworms, but it does encourage breeding. They can hide in that can be quite difficult. Or you can just put them in. You don't really need to do too much in terms of the substrate or things like that. You just literally put them in, and then as you can see they've automatically got a little bit more room to spread around. Now this is quite small. We actually have a larger faunarium which allows them to spread out a lot more, but you know, choose the size that is best for you. Now this isn't the end of the care for any of the reptiles. If you've got crickets, what I would recommend is using and you'll probably get them inside the box, some egg cartons. I would recommend getting some of your own. You can use things like toilet roll tubes and things like that to also put in there, and that basically gives them a lot more area to run around and hide in. That's something that's very important for crickets because they are cannibalistic and they will sometimes turn on each other, and give them lots of those kind of crevices and hides, and reduces that tendency and allows them to just kind of spread out, gives them hiding spots where they can hide from each other but also hide from you. It makes them a lot more generally calmer as a species. The next thing that you need to do is keep them in a relatively good location. So what I recommend is keeping them out of direct sunlight, and I will explain why that's really important later on. But essentially they don't thrive very well in good sunlight, in direct sunlight, so keeping them away from that. So if you do have your vivarium maybe close to a window, and the live food would go above the window so you get direct sunlight on it, I would move it away from there, find another location. The other thing that you would need to do is also keep it away from high traffic areas where maybe it might be knocked over. So keeping it maybe near a walkway, it is a bad idea because the tendency of it being knocked over, and then they're quite good, but occasionally if just one of the things is slightly left off or slightly not put on properly, and the lid can come off them, and then you've got mealworms everywhere or crickets all over the house, and that can be a big problem. Crickets will chirp forever in a house. Get them to survive, and these is harder than it is to get them to survive in a house. The next thing you need to think about is the temperature. You don't want it to be too hot, you know, where it's getting to maybe 30 degrees is way too hot for many of these insects. They will just perish in that. But also, too cold is also another problem because they will not move around and eat, and that's one of the things that you need to do. So the second thing that you need to think about is actually the food. So you can use just oatmeal for your mealworms, and mealworms are fantastic. There is a story of them being able to eat polystyrene and turning it into useful compost. They will eat just about anything, which is why I don't recommend putting cardboard in there, because they will just eat cardboard. But you can use a mixture of kitchen trimmings, so potato, carrot, lettuce, salad items. But a few things that I would avoid are things like citrus, tomatoes and grapes, partly because of the acidity content of those, but with grapes they will actually get stuck in that and perish, and that can go quite smelly as well. Now the other thing that you want to do is to make sure that you're refreshing that food all the time, so put it in for a couple of days and then removing it. Now with crickets that's more of a problem because you do have to remove it, but with mealworms they tend to eat it very, very quickly. In fact, I put food in mealworms and within 2 hours it's all gone. They are ferocious eaters. The other thing that you need to do is just remove the old waste, shall we say. What we mean is any that have not made it. So mealworms, they tend not to die. What they tend to do is pupate and turn into darkling beetles. Now you can remove these and just bin them. It's very easy to do. They will not survive. Crickets will tend to perish, and just removing some of those will be quite good to do. Now what you want to be doing is feeding them at least a couple of times a week, because that gets them the nutrients that you have to give to your leopard gecko or your bearded. With them eating kitchen scraps, they're getting all those vitamins and minerals into them, which they are then passing on to their to the predator, your bearded dragon or your leopard gecko or crested gecko. It also makes them very healthy and gives them like more vibrance, shall we say, or more movement inside the enclosure. And with crickets that can be very exciting, especially leopard geckos love hunting down crickets, so do crested geckos. Bearded dragons find it very interesting, and that's the enrichment for them. But also you're passing on those nutrients, which in turn makes your gecko or bearded dragon really healthy, and that's really important. Now I've talked about not keeping them in sunlight earlier on in the video. The reason for this is that some of the foods that you have to give these guys, if they're in direct sunlight, and especially if you keep them in these boxes, it can create more of a humid condition, and this can cause a problem. Too much humidity will kill your feeder insects very, very quickly, and that is going to be a problem. It makes them unhealthy, which then gets passed on to your reptiles, and that can cause issues. And sometimes it's not about the environment that you're keeping your reptile in which can make them unhealthy, but the environment which you're keeping your live food in. And that's why it's important to keep it out of direct sunlight, but also to think about the humidity of the food that you're putting in. If you're putting too much cucumber in and it's a very hot day, that is going to mist up. But by keeping them in boxes such as this, you can actually reduce that, because this doesn't get as humid as those boxes do. These are terrible things. They're very good for sales and pet shops, because they could just put them on the shelf and you take them home. They're very cheap to use, but they're not very good for keeping the insects in. What you can do is that you can cut a hole in the top of these and you can use that for a humid box, and that can go and sit inside the enclosure of your leopard gecko. Put some paper towel at the bottom and you've got a nice humid box, and that's a good way to use these boxes up. The other option is that if you actually buy live food from us, we do sell live food. If you would come back with an empty box, we take 25p off the cost of the live food. It's just a simple way of recycling. It's quite a good, effective way. Now, once you have used up all your live food, the most important thing is to clean out the enclosure. It's very tempting just to go, right, we're all finished, let's just put in the next round. What you want to do is to actually go outside, use an outside tap and just rinse it down. Make sure you get all the old stuff out, and then just dry it up, and then get your new insects. That's really the best way. That stops any kind of bacteria or bugs getting. I would give it a good wipe with maybe a baby wipe as well. Just get rid of those kind of bacteria, any kind of mold that might have developed from a food and things like that. Remember that and I'm going to just say this again for one more time, is that the quality of the food that you are giving your animal will determine the quality of the life of your reptile. So when you're giving prey like fresh cuttings and trimmings and things like that, the quality of that is going to then translate into your gecko, because they're eating that and they're getting all the nutrients, and then that's being passed on to your reptiles. And that's really, really important to remember. It's not about, giving them, sometimes you can get the dried insect food that doesn't have quite the right nutrition, in my opinion. And remember to always dust your insects with the Nutribowl in order to top up those vitamins and to give that little bit of calcium. Now, the other thing that I'm going to mention here, and this is a very important one, is the bug gel. Now, the bug gel is that idea that you can put a gel in there which will give them the moisture to drink and keep them alive for longer. No, don't use that. In my experience, what that creates is a potential drowning hazard. They can still drown in it. I've seen crickets go into that and not come out. I've seen mealworms go into that and not come out. The other thing is that it's a big, huge moisture aspect that then kind of in hot weather kind of expands and kind of creates too much of a humid area. The other problem is that you still have to add food in, so it actually costs more money. But much of the food that you're putting in has enough moisture in it that for crickets and the mealworms and the locusts and your roaches will all absorb it and have enough moisture for them. They don't need the bug gel. It is just an additional expense, really. All you need, put in some cucumber, put in some carrot, put in some potato, and you've got enough moisture in there for them. Now, that's really as easy as it is to keep them alive food, and some people actually enjoy keeping them alive food just as much as they like keeping the reptiles. That's why you have isopods, which are essentially a cleanup crew, but they are also food. Cresties really love them, leopard geckos really love them. They've got really great nutritional value, and you can breed them quite quickly. Greys and oranges can breed at a ferocious rate. That if you've got a colony of that going, you do actually have additional food that you could feed every few weeks to your leopard gecko to give them a little bit of variety without actually having to purchase them in. And people go to extravagant lengths to creating perfect environments for them, with soil and branches and plants, and giving them food as well, that they become another pet in the house. And that is quite true. Isopods are some of the best insect pets that I can recommend. We have 3 species here: the cubist red pandas, the tropical grey, and the orange. I don't actually feed them very often. I will occasionally feed the tropical greys because they grow quite large, but I also am looking to sell those to people in here. They make a fantastic cleanup crew. We have some of the oranges in our roll python enclosures just to help keep them clean. We still go in there and clean them, but they are higher nutritionally valued, but they are also a lovely species to keep, and looking after them is really great as well. And that's one of the things to think about with your mealworms and crickets, to make sure that they're looked after. And there are some people who breed crickets. They have them in large enclosures and they have crickets all throughout there, and the crickets breed, so they've got a continuous supply. You can also breed mealworms in kind of a draw system where you've got darkling beetles laying eggs, and then they've got the mealworms, and that can be a good way. And some people who aren't even connected to reptiles, such as people who like to feed birds, do this as well, and it's a fantastic way. And there are those who breed also dubia roaches as well. But I thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you are able to take good care of your feeder insects from the advice provided. Please do remember to like, share and comment on the video, but also subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.